So in this video, we're going to talk about the alarming amount of Ford Ecoboost engines that I keep seeing that seem to be just catching fire very randomly, and also talk about the Goodwill scheme which started just 6 weeks ago to fix the 1 litre Ford Ecoboost wet belt problems. Are Ford honouring their agreements? Are they actually fixing these engines? Are people getting their money back? Well, you can find out in this video, so don't miss it. Right, welcome back to Car UK and to this episode. Today I'm going to talk to you about the Ecoboost fires that appear to be happening far more frequently, and we're going to talk about that and what may be causing that. I want to know your opinions on it. And also, we're going to be talking now about the wet belt saga. Actually, are Ford now fixing these engines? It's been 6-7 weeks until Ford finally came out after relentless pressure for many years in order to fix these wet belts. So let's talk about that, what's been happening. I've been doing a lot of research online. I've been talking to people by email and on Facebook, etc., and all the groups who have been affected by the 1 litre Ecoboost wet belt problem. Now, if you haven't checked out this beforehand, you can check out my previous videos, what's led up to this. Effectively, the 1 litre Ecoboost engine has what we call a wet belt system. So it has a cam belt that is submerged in oil. Very different system. It's quite a relatively new thing that's been around for about 10 or 15 years. Predominantly Ford that have used this system, although Peugeot, Citroën and even Honda have used it as well. The system is pretty poor and it's pretty much been dropped now by all manufacturers because rubber and oil don't really mix, and what happens is, in brief, is that the belts are deteriorating far too quickly and are effectively clogging up and basically breaking these engines. Anyway, if you need to catch up with that, go and check out the links in the description where I go in more detail about what causes these issues. Now, 6-7 weeks ago, Ford did change the goalposts here because they effectively brought out a new Goodwill scheme. If you had problems with the Ford Ecoboost in the past, the 1 litre, you went to Ford. If you had full service history, you had to prove all the servicing, you had to prove you used the correct oil because they use very specialist oil in these engines. If you had all that, you should get a discount basically off a new engine. If it was under warranty, didn't matter. It was repaired under warranty, didn't cost you a penny. But if you're out of the warranty period, you only got so much contribution towards the repair of that vehicle. It was capped at around 60 or 70%. Now, that's quite a lot of money that will take off for you. However, the cost of repairing these still could end up in costing you thousands of pounds, even with the maximum discount, which most people were eligible to get in the first place, mainly because Ford did make it particularly difficult in order for you to get that maximum discount, make sure all the paperwork was in order, and particularly trying to nail people down on specific oil grades on invoicing. If it wasn't right, if it was too vague, they just wouldn't honour the Goodwill. Now, with the new documents that came out 6-7 weeks ago that were leaked, with lots of pressure coming from all other sources in the media, the press, and of course all you guys as well, customers out there, and Facebook groups in particular, putting pressure on Ford in order to clean their act up and sort out these wet belt issues. And they did. They come out with the document, and basically what it did was relax the goalposts and increase the amount of discount or Goodwill that was offered to fix these engines. It went up from, like I said, from about 60-70% discount all the way up to 100%. They will pay in full to have these engines repaired if it meets the new criteria. The new criteria is laxed, but it doesn't mean it's going to fix everyone's problems. Effectively, in brief, the engines will be pre-2019 that will be covered under this new Goodwill scheme. So where the engines started roughly about 2012 up to 19, however, it only caps to 10 years. So effectively, you'd have to be 2014 now up to 2019. Those are the engines which would be covered under the Goodwill scheme. They have to be less than 150,000 miles, which most of them are. And most crucially, they still need to show service history, but plus and minus 3 months. So you could be slightly over or missed a service 1 year by a couple of months, it won't matter. And there was an exception as well during COVID. If you'd missed during COVID, they will let you off of that one. But other than that, you must have up-to-date service history plus or minus 3 months. If you fell into that criteria and your wet belt effectively failed, the failure would be literally complete loss of engine power, the belt snapping, deteriorating, or basically oil starvation, so an oil light coming on, loss of power, etc. All these are wet belt related. They are claiming they were going to replace these engines. You can make an appointment, get it in, pay for a diagnosis, that will be refunded, and the whole cost of the repair and the new engine going in will be completely covered by Ford UK. That's what was supposed to be happening. So the question is Ford honouring its commitment under this new Goodwill scheme? Well, yes, it is. So far, it's only, 6-7 weeks in. However, they do appear to be doing what they say they're doing. People have been contacting me, and I've been contacting individuals. I've been reading a lot of the groups and stuff like that. And there is definitely people out there who are now getting their cars fixed and getting 100% Goodwill under this new scheme, which is great news, because now if you've got a vehicle between 14 and up to sort of 18, 19 plate, there was a changeover midpoint, so you have to be careful there. But if you fall in that criteria, that sort of 5-year band, 4 or 5 year band, the likelihood is if you've got good history on that vehicle, i.e. it's up to date, if it goes wrong the wet belt, you're going to get it covered. It's going to get covered by Ford. That's what they're claiming. How long this lasts for, who knows? We don't know. They could change it at any time. However, I suspect that they'll keep honouring this really until basically these engines will phase out over the next sort of few years, because it only goes up to 2018, 19. So as the years goes on, the amount of engines that will be sort of repaired under this Goodwill will obviously naturally reduce. And it doesn't just end there as well, because not only are people who've been experiencing these problems recently, since this new Goodwill scheme was announced, are now getting their engines fixed, there are actually customers who have previously had their car repaired, so maybe a year or 2 years ago, even further back than that, by Ford, who would have fallen into the new criteria, who have managed to get refunds for the cost of those repairs. Now, I haven't got loads of information on this, but I have spoke to a few people, and I have got a few sources who have been directly refunded. And I would say to anyone out there, if you've had your car repaired because of this wet belt problem, it was diagnosed by Ford, and they made you pay a contribution towards those repairs, which could have been in the thousands of pounds, and you paid it, or you even paid the whole bill, then you need to get back in touch with Ford, particularly if your car, and you must be able to prove this, meets the new criteria. So i.e. it would have been less than 10 years of age, it would have been under 2019 plate, and it would have had full service history. A lot of people were thrown back in the early days because they didn't have the Pacific oil grade on the invoicing sheet, so they could go and got a service done by another garage, not a Ford garage, and they didn't put the correct 5W20 grade oil on there. Amount of people who were thrown back by Ford under Goodwill schemes previously because of that, that's now gone. So if you've had any issues regarding the servicing standards they were trying to apply to you to say why you couldn't get Goodwill, definitely get back in touch with Ford, and I'd like to see more people get in contact with me who've had some good success with it, because obviously it's not just about the bad points, it's also Ford are doing a good job. We do need to mention that as well, because obviously we want to get this fixed, and obviously Ford want to try and I hope they try and want to rebuild their reputation from this really rotten saga they've been facing over the last decade with this, well, frankly horrible engine. So far it is looking really, really promising. However, there are a couple of things that we must mention here which are still very disappointing. Now, the first one being there seems to be a very lack of coordination between the local dealers across the UK in regards to this scheme. A lot of people don't seem to be very well aware of it, particularly service advisors. A lot of people are really struggling in order to get their claim put through, getting their cars into dealerships locally to get them diagnosed so they can then go on and claim under the Goodwill scheme from Ford UK. That does seem to be a real issue. Some dealers just appear to be better than others in dealing with this. However, it is crucial to point out and remember as well, your local franchise dealer isn't the one who's actually going to be paying for this in full. They're going to get paid by Ford, and you have to remember as well that these local franchise dealers are not only doing work for Ford and recalls and stuff like this work here, they're also doing local servicing locally. They've obviously got new car sales and used car sales as well, and they've only got one workshop. So when you go to your local dealership, which are probably understaffed, haven't got a lot of technicians, there's a massive shortage of that, trying to get these cars fixed under recall, which they'll get paid for, no problem, but they are very big jobs. They take up a lot of time, and they've got to use those technicians where they can to fill all the jobs from servicing, sales and used sales. So they're not going to be able to fix as many of these recalls as they probably want to, and there's going to be pressure coming down from managers, sales managers, dealer principals, to make sure that their actual local branch itself is getting their commitment sorted before having to deal with all this recall work. So you are going to struggle with some places that are just busy and are going to be unable to get this work through for you as quick as maybe people would like, or in some cases probably don't want to be doing it. So you have to make sure you really pressure these dealerships if you feel as though you're being sort of rebuffed. Or alternatively, like I said, there's loads of dealers everywhere. Most towns have got a Ford dealership. If you're struggling with one Ford agent, you can go to another. So that could be another option as well. And if anyone needs a documentation, by the way, as well, because a lot of the time when people are speaking to Ford UK about this or their local agent, they've been a little bit sort of vague with it, and it's almost you sort of have to prove that you know what you're talking about, but you know that there is a Goodwill scheme. And if anyone's unsure of that, you can find it online. If you type in the Goodwill scheme for Ecoboost on Google is your friend. It will show up, and if anyone's unsure, I have actually copies of that. If you email me, my email's in the description. I'll gladly send you the paperwork, which gives you the criteria, and obviously you can put out to Ford and hopefully get your car fixed. Another thing that's mentioned as well that Ford haven't dealt with as well, and actually has left a bit of a gap in this scheme, is that this actually only goes up to 2000, as mentioned before, 18-19 vehicles. It says pre-2019 vehicles. The engines changed in around 2019. Now, it doesn't mean they aren't wet belt. They are. They went from a 2 wet belt system, the system from 2012 to 2019, and they went to a 1 wet belt system. So the main drive belt, the bigger of the 2 belts, went from a rubber wet belt to a chain, but they still left the oil pump belt as a wet belt. And they still fail, they can still clog up. I've had numerous people contact me who've had later engines, 19, 20, 21 plates in particular, because they're now out of warranty, which have failed, and it has been down to this wet belt system, only on basis of it's driving the oil pump belt. Those engines, the later engines, are not covered under this 100% Goodwill scheme. Now, there still may be a Goodwill scheme in place. I'm struggling to find any evidence of that, but I would imagine that still is the case, but it's not going to give you the full 100% discount, which means if you have a problem wet belt related on over a 2019 plate engine, the reality is that you're going to have to put your hand in your pocket. Even if you meet the criteria, you've got all the service history, everything's bang up to date, they're still going to be asking you to pay a hefty sum in order to replace your engine. So that is something that really needs sorting out. I don't understand why they seem to be isolating it up to 2018-19, as always suggesting that there's not a problem after that date, because there is. I've been contacted by numerous people. I've spoken to people and traders as well who've had later engines that have also failed. So it is definitely still happening. It's still got a rubber belt in there. It shouldn't be there. Why was it not changed to a chain? I don't know why, but there we go. So just remember that if you've got post-19 engine, you're still going to have to put your hand in your pocket if you have one of these failures. Anyway, we'll keep you updated on that going forward, any developments, and if anyone's had anything different to that, so i.e. they've been to Ford and they've done everything right and they've been rejected, I would like to hear from you. So please get in touch by saying my details are in the link description. Now let's talk about Ecoboost engines and fires, because I don't know what it is recently. I seem to be seeing an alarming amount of people reporting videos as well on Facebook groups. I've had people emailing me talking about how their cars have effectively just caught fire, and predominantly it's 1 litre and also 1.6 litre Ecoboost that seem to be the main culprit of this. Now, it has to be said that cars do catch fire. Unfortunately, this does happen. Sometimes it can be due to poor maintenance, it can be a manufacturing problem, someone's tampered with the vehicle, maybe fixing something and not something put back something right, and fuel can escape and catch fire. There's all sorts of reasons why vehicles can catch fire. But if it's a manufacturing issue, it's usually dealt with very, very quickly by a manufacturer for obvious safety reasons. A typical example of that was the Vauxhall Zafira a few years ago. They had problems with wiring issues, basically getting too hot inside the car. It was to do with the heater system, and they basically recalled the cars because they were catching fire, and got a lot of them fixed pretty quickly. In fact, I was dealing with a dealership a few years ago, and they used to have them in all the time, fixing them on recall. So there's an example of a manufacturer who found a problem that was causing fires and dealt with it quickly. But Ford don't seem to be talking about, or can find any evidence of, about issues regards to fire with their vehicles, which is alarming because, like I said a few seconds ago, I keep seeing countless amounts of videos of these Ecoboost engines, 1 litres and 1.6s, catching fire. It's pretty much every single day now someone is posting on the groups saying that their vehicle has caught fire, and the reaction from Ford is basically they're not interested. That to me, it gives alarm bells, and I don't understand why Ford seem to be giving a very closed shop about this. This is a huge safety issue. Now maybe it's been blown out of proportion by me, I don't know, but I do generally feel that there is something going on here, and I can't seem to get to the bottom of it, which is where I need your help from. I've tried doing a bit of digging on it, it's to think what could be causing this. There is some speculation that it might be to do with injector seal problems they're suffering with these Ecoboost engines, or the rails are basically cracking and the fuel's escaping and catching fire. Some say it might be a wiring issue. The fact is, I don't think anyone really knows. There doesn't really seem to much chat about this. So I want to hear from you guys. If anyone out there has had a issue where basically their vehicle has caught fire, a Ford Ecoboost, please get in touch. And particular people who have had an answer to that question. Maybe they've found out, maybe they've had an engineer's report done, or the insurance company stepped in and they got to the bottom of it. Or maybe Ford actually stepped in, who knows, and they actually refunded you or gave you some money towards a new car or something like that. I want to hear it because I generally feel there is something going on here. It's a little bit out of the ordinary, the amount of cars, these Ecoboosts, that seem to be catching fire. And don't just take my word for it, go and have a look on some of the Facebook groups here about the Ecoboost engine failures. Every other post now just seems to be about 1 litre Ecoboost and 160s catching fire. It's pretty much every other day. And if there is an issue out there, it needs to be talked about. It needs to have more details about it. This is a real safety issue, and the only way that if there's a problem out there to expose it and to get people to act is to put pressure on these manufacturers to fix these problems, particularly when it is a danger to life. So let me know. Like I say, my details are in the comments. If you want to send me an email, please only get in touch with me if you've actually been a victim of a fire of a Ford Ecoboost. I would like to speak to you about that. Please then get in touch. Thank you guys for watching this one. Normal service will resume this week with plenty of other content coming on the channel. Thanks again. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.